Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk Whiskey. I'm Nick here with you as always. Thanks for joining us for episode number 97. So, in continuation of our Jim Beam mini-series, we got another one for you. We've got Jim Beam Devil's Cut, bottled at a nice 45% ABV, or 90 proof for those of you who can't do the math. We'll pour a little bit there. So, as you may know, if you've ever taken a tour of a distillery or been inside a maturation warehouse, you've probably heard about the angel share. So, the angel share is basically a cut of whiskey that's been inside the barrel as it's aging that is lost due to evaporation. So, obviously, in a warehouse you have fluctuating temperatures and that sort of thing, just pure evaporation in the air will happen. So in some places like Kentucky, you may have more evaporation or loss to the angel share than you would, say, in Scotland near the ocean or something like that. So there's different ratios with this, a certain percentage really that each distillery is going to be accounting for. So on the flip side of that, when you dump out a barrel of whiskey, there's actually still some whiskey left in there that's trapped inside of the wood. So, Jim Beam has created a proprietary process, of which I'm not privy to, where they can actually extract that whiskey out of the barrel. Now, it's probably going to take a lot of barrels to get a bottle of whiskey like this. So, as you can imagine, they do blend that with some of their other product. So, they say that they age it or blend with Jim Beam that's been aged a little bit longer, which is great. So what I'm expecting for whiskey that's been pressed or however they do it from inside the wood is something that's really taken on a lot of those oaky notes, charred wood notes that you would get. So let's see what we got. Let's switch these around real quick. And so on the color, you got a nice, really deeply saturated, lost them out of the glass there due to the angel's share, or stupidity share. Probably poured a little bit too much, but that's alright. So you got a nice coppery amber glow, and I can sort of see the light that I'm using bouncing, refracting off of that, which is kind of doing a nice little glow. Let's go in for the aroma. So right off the bat, got a really nice sweet nose to it. It's got a lot of cherry cola notes, vanilla, caramel. Not as much of the oaky wood notes that I was expecting on the nose, but certainly something that is a sweeter type wood, almost like a syrupy sort of concoction going on. Definitely a little bit of dried fruits, dried cranberries. If you think about dried fruit of a trail mix, that's similar to the note that I'm getting on this. In terms of just giving a little stroll around the glass, as Ralphie says, the legs are pretty decent. So they're lingering a little bit. I'm going to guess that they, really do capitalize on what they said about it being blended with some whiskey that's been aged for a little bit longer than their traditional blend. So that's great to see there. Let's go in for the taste. Now, already, right off the bat, we're getting helped out by that higher ABV that's in there. I'm getting more of those oaky wood notes that I suspected but didn't find in the nose so much. So that's really coming through, a really robust, deep charcoal, just earthiness to it, paired with that really sweet vanilla liqueur in there, almost vanilla malt-like, but not entirely. And what I mean about the vanilla malt is in the sense that whereas the Jim Beam vanilla, which is what I was getting, something similar to like a vanilla extract, syrupy kind of flavors in there. This is more confectionery in nature. So just a little bit different types of vanilla, but it's really interesting, that you can decipher between different types of vanillas, and that it's not all just, lumped into one big group of vanilla. There's a lot out there. So really cool that we can discern that in the Devil's Cut and the Jim Beam vanilla. Obviously, one is not the other, but just thinking in tasting profiles, then you have a pretty interesting comparison to make. In terms of the mouthfeel, it's really rich and flavored. It's got a lot of great notes to explore, but the finish is quick, and the mouthfeel is pretty watery in nature. In terms of that, you don't have a lot lingering around. It's not an oily single pot still whiskey. It's just quick. It's crisp. It's refreshing in the sense that you get a real powerful punch of flavors, but not in the sense that it is light or, that type of fruity or sweet in any way. But there you go. Definitely getting some brown sugar in there, some graham crackers, just raw cinnamon. You can take the cinnamon challenge with this one. That's not an endorsement, by the way. That's just a joke. Don't go and do the cinnamon challenge, or the Tide Pod challenge. That's a good one too. Got some real idiots out there. Anyway, just going a little bit further. If you ever know the Red Hot dollar, the cinnamon candies, hot candies, that's sort of the finish that I'm getting on this. Sort of coats the top of the mouth, and you get sort of that spiciness that's in there. Definitely helped out by the 90 proof that's in there. But licorice, a lot of great different notes that are going on with this, which if you're going to add water or even thinking about mixing this, I would be a little bit cautious with it, just because I'm worried with the mouthfeel and the finish that you would lose those flavors pretty quickly. But certainly experiment and see if anything unfolds by doing so. But I think for my personal taste that I would just leave this neat and not add any water to it. That's just me, except for experimental purposes. So in the sense of a score, again, this is one of those whiskeys that it's hard to score against because you don't have a lot in the really specific category. I mean, how many people are taking the time and effort to extract whiskey that's inside of the wood of a barrel itself and, blend that with their other product? I don't think there's a lot out there doing that. So for a score, I would say it's a solid 88, right? It's got a great foundation there, some good flavors. There's things that are similar to it, but I think have a little bit deeper, richer body. They're a little bit longer lasting. The mouthfeel is a little bit more syrupy, a little heavier in nature, which I like personally as a preference for Kentucky bourbon. So, but in and of itself, 88, pretty decent score. Let me know what you think. Next week we'll find something else for you, whether or not it's another flavored whiskey from Jim Beam or one of their other expressions, such as their rye, the bonded warehouse version. There's tons of expressions out there, and that's why I'm doing this mini-series, because it's so nice to have a company with a diverse range of expressions within the own Jim Beam brand, which is cool. So if you're going to drink, as always, drink responsibly, and we'll see you next week.